All right, we made it. Luke Blue
G'day,
Andrews.
mate.
Mate, I have a question. Where did the nickname Blue come from? Because you're not blue, you're red. But
That's right.
where's
Look,
blue come from?
being in line with us Australians being hilarious, and it goes back. It's more of a military term, I think, but it was used sort of wider society. But quick history lesson for you. But yeah, anyone with red hair has been traditionally called blue, and I think it goes back to tall guys called shorty, short guys called stretch, red hair blue. We're like I said, we're a funny bunch down here.
Yeah,
So there's a couple other theories as well, but we'll talk about that another time.
yeah, love it. Well, mate, you and I, for those of you, we spent about 45 minutes off camera trying to fix technical issues. And we were talking about Murphy's Law, and I had to get a reminder I actually Googled it because I forgot what Murphy's Law is, but essentially is anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and I do want to ask about that in kind of in SAS operations and whether you guys, because I've heard Nico talk about it as well. He's like, Murphy's Law, mate, you got to be prepared.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But we've got time. I've cancelled my other commitment, actually. Just quick update. So we've got plenty of time to go through this. But let's get started from the beginning. So tell me about, I guess, origin story, like what you are, who you are. You served, for those of you that have seen the channel, you probably watched the video with Nico. So you've served with Nico, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very well.
And
Let's stick together at one stage, but we'll get into that, I suppose.
yeah, same regiment, same unit.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah. So,
So you're very different to a lot of the SAS guys that I've met, to be honest. Not that I've met many of them because there isn't many of them, but to me anyway, from the outside, you seem a lot more, I don't know, happy.
yeah, it's funny because, let's say, like obviously before I'm getting into my intro, but yeah, in an infantry battalion, which is if you're listening, you know nothing about the army. It's the people that you see on the ads running around with guns and doing the business. And basically, in an infantry battalion, you're all kind of cut from the same cloth. You go to the same factory, the School of Infantry, and you get churned out. And there's a known quantity and an expected quantity. Whereas in in special forces in general, all across the world, you know, um, it's a bit of a cabaret all sorts because you can be from any branch of the military, Navy, Air Force, part-time, full-time, and essentially the standard is, well, hey, come and have a go, and if you're what we're looking for, then you're welcome to come and join. So, I guess having said that, you know, in the SAS, for example, yeah, you do get a whole bunch of weird and wonderful characters over there. So, you know, yeah, that's pretty much an explanation of that. But
Yeah.
did you ask me before, like in terms of an intro, sort of how I ended up there, or
Yeah, I kind of want to know, give me a little bit about your background, like childhood. What was life like growing up? What made you want to pick this path? Because it's a very serious path, obviously. It's not something that most people will do. I guess what do you think is different about your makeup, character, and constitution that made you want to go down this path?
well, to give you the short answer, I'm an army nerd, or I was anyway. So that's how I got there. But to break that down, what that looks like is I come from I'm an army brat, is what we call the son of a soldier, or your mum and dad was in the army. So I come from a long line of soldiering. Yeah, like I said, my father was ended up leaving the army as a sergeant major, which is, for those who don't know much about the army, it's the person who stands out the very front on a parade with a big pace stick and yells at everyone. And they're the disciplinarian. So they're the person that's spent essentially 25 to 30 years in the army. It's that they're the senior soldier of any group of soldiers. So that's the sort of father figure that I had. Um, and so growing up, went to three different primary schools and finally settled in Brisbane to do my high school. So classic military family, you move around a lot.
Mhm.
And that was my whole world. That's all I knew. My mum was a special needs teacher, specializing in red-headed kids with ADD, obviously. And so quintessential Australian family, moving around a bit. And yeah, that's all I knew, mate, honestly. My great grandfather landed on the beaches of Gallipoli. So he's an original Anzac. And just grew up with the military ethos just running in my blood. So, it's really it was my only kind of, and it's not, my parents didn't encourage it. They sort of said, well, you can do whatever you want. But I think from about age 6 or 7, I was pretty well, I knew that I was going to be a soldier. So.
That's so interesting. How does a 6 or 7-year-old make that decision?
I know, right? Well, I guess it's you look at the amount of guys you and I know that, you end up doing the profession that your father did. I mean, I know a whole bunch of guys that end up becoming lawyers or doctors or whatever. And it's a lot of the time, it's when you grow up with that, that's your only environment. Your aperture of life at that particular point in time is about this thin. And, the other factors that come in, they don't come into life later on. And generally by then you've made kind of that unconscious decision, haven't you? So,
yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I'm very lucky because going through school, I mean, how many people do you know don't know what they want to do? I still don't know what I want to do now after, but at the time I did, and I just wanted to get into the army. It's all I wanted to do.
Yeah. And you wanted to get into the army, but did you have the SAS in your sights from early on, or did that come by later?
Oh, I did. To be fair, I didn't know what the SAS was until I was, when the penny dropped for me was when I was in grade 6. And I remember waking up, coming out. I was living in Brisbane. It was 1996, and the Black Hawk tragedy, which, if you don't know about that, Google that. That basically, I remember my mum listening to the radio, being shocked, and she was saying, a whole bunch of SAS guys have been killed in this helicopter crash. Two Black Hawks collided when they were doing some training at night up in Townsville, and that was a huge. It was headlines all over Australia at that time. I remember, and I was like, well, who are these guys? And that's sort of what sparked the I suppose what made me inquisitive, and then. Believe it or not, when I said before I was an army nerd, I really was. I mean, my grade 11 and grade 12 diary at school, I literally had cutouts from the paper of SAS guys, parachuting, jumping out of planes. Everyone in my grade's like, who is this guy? Like, what a loser. Pictures of, military stuff. And even in my bedroom, I had, I made my own Yowie suit, and I had posters and, old rounds that my dad had, old sort of shells. And honestly, it was an army nerd is the best way to describe it. So,
yeah.
And then of course, joining army cadets at age 13, whenever I was old enough to do to hit all the, I suppose the gates, I jumped at it.
So, yeah. So the Black Hawk, I didn't know about the Black Hawk tragedy. So that was what was that, like a training mission up in Townsville, and
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Accident happened. What year was that?
1996.
96.
Yeah. So, I'd be sacrilegious to get this wrong, but 15 SAS soldiers killed, and 1 or 2 from the aviation regiment. I think 2, because it was 17 all up. So, but you think it's not a very big unit numbers wise. So 15 men to be wiped off the Orbat like that overnight. It took decades for that place to basically get back up to speed. So it's a pretty tragic pretty tragic event. And actually, while I think of it, just while we're chatting, our bar, we have our own bar on base in Perth. It's called the Gratwick Club, or colloquially known as the Grotto. And at the Grotto, you go up, there's a huge long wooden bar where we all drink and celebrate, and we have Anzac days and basically all our social occasions up there. And behind the bar, you've got all these pewter mugs sitting underneath all the photos of all the guys, initially starting with the Black Hawk tragedy, and subsequently every other SAS soldier who's been killed since then, both on operations training. Even the dogs, the military working dogs, have got their own dog bowl. And the idea being, on Anzac Day or anniversaries or whatever, you can choose a mug and say, I'll have this bloke, or I'll have Brownie or whatever, and they'll grab you the mug down, and we'll put a beer or whatever in it, and we're still drinking with them. So it's a pretty cool concept.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 15 SAS guys, like I don't know about the numbers and how many men we lose in battle, but there probably hasn't been 15 men lost in the last decade, let alone, like, it'd be rare, I assume, to to lose an SAS.
Oh yeah,
A huge thing.
yeah, huge chunk. And yeah, you talk about it. That's, I don't know if I could throw a dart. You got to be careful talking about numbers and capability because there's still people doing the job, but potentially, 10% of the workforce gone overnight, in a click of a finger. So, and the thing about that job is, so on the base in Campbell Barracks in Swanbourne, where the SAS live and operate, there's a thing we call the Rock. It's in the Garden of Reflection. There's this big rock, and on the rock has got all the names of all the SAS soldiers that have been killed in training and in operations. And the tragic thing is, since inception in 1957, there's close to 60 names on there. And from combat-related injuries, I think there's 5 or less. Just, again, I haven't had time to research this stuff. I should know it off the top of my head, but guys actually killed in combat in the SAS, I think it's 5.
Mm-hmm.
So that just goes to show over the years, and unfortunately, it's almost like a big game of trial and error because all the I guess the way we train now as an organization, it's obviously still, there's a lot of danger involved, but it's very calculated danger, if that makes sense. It's for example, parachuting. There's just military parachuting is one of the safest things you can do. I mean, comparing it to civilian parachuting is about 20 different checks involved in between putting your parachute on and jumping out of the plane, right? So, but the unfortunate thing is how we've got to that point is through the loss of all these guys. There's guys that have been killed in parachuting, trying to cross rivers, shooting, demolitions, like everything that you do as an SAS soldier in training and in operations, someone has been killed in training, and because of that, they've made the standard better.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. So,
have we lost more men would you say, in the training process? Yeah,
easily.
It's so interesting because that's the same thing as in mixed martial arts and combat sports. Majority of the injuries happen in training and sparring.
Yeah, that's right.
Not in the actual fight. Any serious injury I've ever had has happened in training.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's just a bloody tragedy. And honestly, like if I just thinking now, talking about close calls, the amount of close calls I've seen in training, on operations as well, but way more in training. And I've had close calls in training as well. So yeah, so you just think all the almost were incidents as well are pretty interesting. But that's the nature of the job, I guess. You're training within an inch of your life, and you need to push you've got to push the envelope, and to do that, you've got to take risks, calculated risks, but they are risks.
Yeah. So 1996, how old were you in 1996? Do you remember? Roughly? 11. So that's when you first hear about the SAS. When did you sign up for selection? How old were you?
I was 23. So I was in an infantry battalion, like I described earlier. I was in 6th Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already done, so I was 23. I'd already spent a bit over a year of my life in Afghanistan. So I'd done 2 6-month, 6-7-ish month tours as an infantry soldier. And it's funny because I look back now, like a 23-year-old now, it's a very different prototype to when I was 23. And, I could have said the same about my father. And it's a generation thing, I get it. But it's quite surreal, really, when I think back. It doesn't, I often think, was that another lifetime? But I was 23, about to turn 24, and I'd sort of doing the selection was on my radar for a while, but I always thought, well, maybe next year. And I was on my second tour of Afghanistan, and we had a bunch of SAS guys operating out of our base. I actually spoke about this on a different podcast, but I'll tell you, and I came off my shift, or we call it a picket, where you're basically in a gun tower, looking through your night vision, scanning, keeping the base safe while everyone sleeps, right? Everyone does their shift or their picket. And I came off my shift and, went to take a piss in the demountables, and there was basically 5 or 6 SAS guys in there. It's like 2 a.m, right? And they're all putting on their camouflage cream. And I was sort of like half asleep, so holy shit, didn't expect it. 5 minutes later, they were staging out of our base, and it was right up the Chora Valley, which is, sort of where all the Badlands start. And then, 5-10 minutes later, these guys just disappear up the valley like ghosts in the night. And I remember getting back into my swag and just going, holy fuck, look at these guys, man, And I was like, yep, that's what I want to do. And that's when that was in 2008. And then I remember I was just about to come back home, and it was sort of toward the end of the year. And I was like, right. And I remember New Year's Eve that year saying, right, this is the year. Like I woke up New Year's Day, went for a run, and I was like, this is the year I'm doing it, So, and then I just started training and just dedicated, my whole being to getting selected.
Yeah.
Selection.
Yeah. I have a guy that trains jiu-jitsu with us, and he was talking to me. He said he's in the Navy, and he said, I think I want to go for selection. And I put him in touch with Nico. I said, cool. I mean, have a chat to Nico, get some advice, see what you think. And he recently got engaged. He's got a kid on the way, and I saw him at training the other week. He said, I spoke to Nico. I go, how'd you go? He goes, I don't think I'm going to do selection. I just don't think he goes, I don't think I'm ready to sacrifice all that,
Yeah, mate. And that's a fair point. That is a fair point. And what you've got to do is you've got to make sure that the dream aligns with the practicality, the reasoning, or the actual application of it, if that makes sense. So, you do get a lot of dreamers. I mean, I was a dreamer, but I had the underbelly was that I was going to get there no matter what. But, unfortunately, a lot of the time, people that get to selection, they'll pull out, and there's no harm in pulling out. It's a 3-week job interview, right? As we say, so there's no shame in saying that you don't want the job anymore. And that's quite literally what it is. People, maybe they don't realize, or their perception of the difficulty or the dream doesn't align with the actual desire.
Yeah.
And that's when you see, like honestly, day one, you stand there stripped naked, over 150, closer to 200 people on my selection, looking around left and right. And you're like, I was 75 kilos ringing wet, I think. And you see these big units, these massive, rigged up dudes. And you're like, these guys are going to dominate. And then you look around a few weeks later and they're not there. And, or not the same, not all of them. And so it's the best example when you're growing up as a kid, and probably in the martial arts world. I love the ethos, you never judge a book by its cover, because you never know what humans are capable of. And the best lesson in human dynamics I ever received was, the introduction to the SAS and subsequent time in the SAS was probably the best lesson in human dynamics, especially selection. There's gauges for everything in life. A uni degree says that it can quantify everything, can't it? This is my fitness standard. This is my education level. This is my appearance, but there's no gauge for desire. And I think that's where a lot of people oversee, they automatically put themselves in a box and say, well, I'm not going to be able to achieve that because I'm not X, Y, and Z. I don't have these credentials, and I don't have the education. I don't have the whatever. But it's like you just see people around the world that achieve great things. I'm not saying selection's a great thing, but just in general, while we're on the theme, it's just that no one can gauge their desire levels. It's just desire, passion, whatever you want to call it. If you decide you want to do something and you're willing to do the work, that's all it is, isn't it? You see entrepreneurs that say, I want to start a company and become a millionaire. If that's their thing, man, how many people say that? But then how many people actually get to the other end? So I often look at these hardcore entrepreneurs that do the same thing. It's exactly the same. It's just, it's for me, I didn't want to make millions of dollars. I wanted to be an SAS soldier. So
yeah. Well, I think it's achieving difficult things, right? Yeah. And I had a similar experience with my martial arts journey where I realized that maybe I just don't want it enough. Like that glory of being in the UFC and being top 10 and winning a world title, and it looks amazing from just like you had that moment when you saw the SAS guys disappear into the valley, you're like, man, how cool. But then that cool comes at a huge cost.
Mate.
And that's where you go, am I ready to take on the cost? People like, there's some obviously quotes everywhere, but people want the result, but they don't really understand what it takes to get the result. You know, if you knew what it takes to be an Elon Musk, maybe you wouldn't want that.
No, exactly.
And I remember seeing an interview with him with Lex Friedman, and Lex Friedman asking him, you know, are you happy? He goes, I'm okay. I sleep alone most nights, because most people wouldn't want to be me. And that's, you know, that's that same thing. It's like most people wouldn't want what they think they want if they knew what it takes.
Exactly right. Yeah, you raised such a good point. There's, you know, and people aren't always going to show you the real version. So, you know, you might have a perception of, oh, this is what a, you know, successful entrepreneur looks like, or this is what a SAS soldier looks like. But like you said, you've got to walk the path yourself and ask yourself if you're prepared to do the work, and have you got what it takes to get to the other end. And, you know, like the guy you just described, the Navy guy at your gym, you know, there's no shame in saying that. He's cut out a whole lot of years of effort, and, you know, he's had a candid conversation with someone from that world, and he's weighed up the options, and yeah, maybe it's not the best thing to do, because, you know, and my advice is, if you've got a family, I mean, I was single when I did selection, so I didn't have to worry about that. But guys that I saw that had established families or whatever, I mean, personally, I think I could never, you know, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have a relationship while I was in the military, just because the military just demands, the SAS in particular, demands so much of you, and you don't deserve to share the workload with, you know, with someone that you love. So that's just, like, yeah, and I'm older and allegedly was, and you know that. But you know, so it isn't a job. It's yeah, it's not a job. It's not a career. It's a life.
Yeah.
You're living it. Yeah. It's hard to describe, actually, but
absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorite books is a book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek, yeah.
And, you know, we can talk about the how and we can talk about the what, but I really want to understand the why in terms of SAS. Like, yes, the history, dad, granddad, Gallipoli, that is that strong kind of familial history there. And then we had seeing the guys and noticing them and, you know, being like, wow, that's cool. But then at some point it would have gotten to the point where it was hard and you really had to figure out the why.
Yeah.
What do you think that was?
I love talking about this sort of stuff, and I do it a lot. We can get to it down the track, but the charity, the Krait Foundation that I founded a few years ago, we talk exactly about this point, but with people, they've already had the why in the military, and they're looking for the new why. So to go back to the first one in the military, you know, to get into a special forces unit, or even to serve in the army, you've got to have that higher sense of purpose. And, you know, sometimes I think you might just have it. Sometimes you'll find it after you join the military. I mean, the amount of people that join the military straight from school that don't really know why they joined, it's just to get a job. But you start working it out. I think to answer your question with a short answer, I think that my why was to serve other people. And initially it was in the form of my country, you know. And when you're a soldier, you're not meant to ask questions. You know, they say that the army's another branch of when all else politically, when all other political options fail, you know, so it's like the last branch of democracy. But so I guess you're there to serve your country, and you don't decide when or where they send you. If your country have deemed that, you know, a military response is applicable, then, you know, that's you. You're off. And, you know, the particular role that you have in the SAS and in the wider special forces it's a lot nicher. If that's even a word, a lot more niche. You know, so jobs that the rest of the Australian Defence Force can't do. So, you know, could be hostage rescue around the world. So essentially, you know, you're front and center to potentially rescue an Australian diplomat who's, in captivity somewhere around the world. And so that's like the top end of capability and potentially your responsibility. And so Yeah, I guess to wrap it all up, it's the why for me. It's to serve others, to give back,
Yeah.
and I think, you know, and it's funny because when people leave the military, this is a good example to highlight it. You got to talk. You talk about what your currency is. So, you know, if could be a high flying person in the city wearing a suit, what's their currency to make money, right? That's, you know, and I don't begrudge anyone for what their currency is. So knowing your currency, for me, it's yeah, obviously everyone needs money, but you need something that's going to make you tick. That it's got to be a bit bigger. It's got to involve humans. It's got to involve helping, giving back, making something better. You know, problem solving. Because money's just not enough. And you know, yeah, how many people do you talk to say, "Oh, don't take a job for money because you just it'll last a while." But you know, when your head hits the pillow, you've got to have something. Yeah, we're only here for a short time. You've got to contribute. You know,
Yep.
in bigger
Absolutely.
ways than just fill in your pocket. And yeah, okay, fine. You earn money, earn a bit of money, and your family's going to be better off. And so for me, it's finding the sweet spot between got enough money to do what I want, but I just need to be contributing somehow, some way every day.
Yeah. Having an impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Feeling useful. I think a lot of men want to feel useful. They want to feel like I'm actually making an impact, whether it's at work, having
Yeah.
a role where you can contribute to the growth of the business or whatever it is, like having an impact. You know, I remember working security when I was younger because that was the only thing that would fit into my schedule. And I remember having this moment where I thought, you know, yeah, I'm getting paid good money, but like I'm just standing around. I'm not really having an impact. Like I'm just standing around here being, you know, just standing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Impact. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably a better way to describe it. You need to have impact. You need to know that you're not just wasting your time. What you're doing, every action eventually has, you know, is making it better for someone or yeah, someone somewhere, I guess. It's a long,
What was your experience of selection like? What do you remember of it?
it was, yeah, it was obviously terrible, like horrendous. But, you know, I guess, yeah, to describe it, in a weird way, it's a job interview, right?
Mm.
Because people who were serving in that unit select themselves. So you have 3 weeks, and a lot of people get caught up on the physicality of it. Yes, it's hard, but you know, when you're in the army or when you're in the defense force, everyone has a certain level of fitness. So to get that fit, and yeah, you know, is fit the word? It's not like a CrossFit workout where, you know, you're in there for 45 minutes. You've got to, you know, you're carrying a heavy pack. You've got to build your body. It's a cross between, you know, if fitness had a baby with, you know, mongrel or resilience, it's like grit or however you describe it. Fitness isn't going to get you anywhere really. It's just, you know, the physicality aspect is a vehicle to break people down and rip off the onion layers, because what selection's about, it's about finding who you really are. And I feel privileged to be able to do that because, as you said, you know, a lot of young men, particularly in a Western society in Australia where we grow up, you know, we have this clash between masculinity and the rest of the world. It's like young men want to prove themselves. And, you know, you see it, you might, you know, you go on the piss when you're 18, 19 and guys, you know, get into blues and whatever, but it's almost like a misguided or mismatched energy. You want to refocus it. I was given an opportunity to focus my masculinity, right?
Mm.
And prove myself as a man. And, you know, selection was a vehicle for that. So, you know, it's a personality test. You've got the onion layers. Everyone's a good bloke, as you know, when they're going, sitting around at a bar, telling yarns or whatever, like everyone's a good guy. And I think you probably see it in martial arts a little bit as well. But, you know, the true judge of character in my mind is who are you when the chips are down?
Mm.
How do you behave? How do you act? You know, and selection's obviously, it's simulated. Everything on that course is a simulation for the real world, or for you know, you could say it's obviously a simulation for special operations or that sort of world. But if you look at it like a life lesson, you know, if you're a black, how do you act when you've got a family, you're the leader, you got kids and a wife, and you know, financially things are hard, or things are hard at work. Like that's the sort of thing I look at it is I carry across all the lessons I learned from doing selection into my life now. You know, and you described me at the start as, someone that's happy, different from the prototype you've met. I'm an extremely positive person, but I have a lot of perspective now. So why would I let anything upset me or get to me? What in life at the moment, after what I've done, and might sound like a bit of a wanker, but what am I going to worry about? What am I scared of? What am I, is it, I can handle anything. I can deal with it because
yeah. How good is that? And it's funny because I'm fascinated by yourself, Nico, and guys like this, not because of the physicality of it. Like doesn't mean anything to me. It's more the character. And that character, like we get to see a little bit of it in martial arts, nowhere near as much as what you guys would, because you get tested at a different level. But we do a thing in jiu-jitsu called Shark Tank, or in MMA training. And Shark Tank is basically, let's say you're preparing for a 5 rounds of 5-minute fight, right? We'll Shark Tank you, which means every 2 or so minutes for maybe 10 rounds, you get a fresh partner.
Oh, yeah.
You stay in and you get a fresh partner. And what I've seen over the years is, this happened to me like last week. We had a new guy at the gym and he was young and physically capable and athletic and all of that, but he kept giving up. Things would get hard in the round, he'd get tired and he'd be like, I need a rest. I'm like, no, you don't rest. You just survive the round.
Yeah.
You don't get to do so. And then I've seen the opposite, where I get a guy who's a accountant, skinny, no athletic background, and he's just fucking grit. Like he'll put up with it. He knows he's getting smashed. He's a brand new white belt. There's no way he's winning this round. He knows that, but he goes in and he does it and he finishes the round. And what I've realized throughout the years is, I said this to my wrestling coach yesterday. I said, mate, I don't really like any of the men that I know outside of the gym. I don't know. I don't really like them much. And it's not that I don't like them. It's just the guys who I know that I've grown up with in the gym that have gone from blue belt to purple belt to brown belt to black belt. They've had injuries. They've gone through divorces. And they still turn up and I know a guy who went blind almost. He lost like 80% of his sight and he still trains.
Is that right?
And that character is, I think, what's missing in Western society, especially with masculinity. Like we're so quick to say masculinity, toxic masculinity. No. That's what you want. You want those men, because that's the man that's going to decide to get up in the morning and go to work and work the 2 jobs to provide for you and kids. And that's what you actually want.
100%. And let's remind everyone that toxic masculinity won us 2 world wars. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I call it, I know it was a bit of a catchphrase. I still, for the record, have never ever bought a Gillette razor, and I never will after that ad. But anyway, we digress. I call it a mismatch of generation, probably not generation, but it is a mismatch. So, the world that we're in now, the Western world, because democracy's gifted us with such, what's the hardest thing that's going to happen in my day today? I might burn my lips on a latte taking my son to basketball training after this, but like, when life's easy, it's easy to find, I don't know what you want to call it, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or when you're at the top, things irritate you that wouldn't irritate someone who's not at the top of that pyramid. So, when we have, the left-leaning parts of the world say that, men are too masculine. Well, I think, it's just a mismatch of energy, because you do need that, but there's places in society for these men, but we need to guide them there. And it's a whole bunch of different areas, but I think martial arts is a great example of how because we don't want men to lose that. We need that. But it's a great way to kind of, to not hide it, but tame it, teach yourself where to use it, where it's applicable. It's like a superpower, like a Harry Potter to school, just trying to teach them when and where to use their powers, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I think a society needs that. I think I feel personally most comfortable around men who have that warrior archetype, because that warrior archetype comes with, I want to serve, I want to better myself, I want honor and respect and loyalty, like those virtues that I think that's the type of archetype I feel most comfortable with. But we also need the philosophers, the doctors, the academics, the financial people, I just don't feel as comfortable around those archetypes that I do around men who are warriors, you know?
And I think you said something really good before, just with, you don't like hanging out with people, or you use the people in your jiu-jitsu gym as the benchmark. And imagine that times 100 when
Yeah.
you leave, well, the military, that's when that becomes the standard of human. It's not hard. It's not that it's hard to accept anyone else. You've got to just change because I see the good in everyone. And I think if people have good intentions, you can see that. So you can't expect someone to be, oh, you're not like the guys in my team of SAS guys, so I'm not going to talk to you, but I think what you're talking about, what I'm talking about is you've had the opportunity to bond through adversity. So, that's why military training is hard. That's why military training has hard things. Why do you think civilian groups of people, corporate fun days, whatever you want to call them, they do these things like Tough Mudder, True Grit, because at the end of it, people are closer, people are tight, because you've had to rely on people to pull you over a wall or, help you through a tunnel. And that on a microscopic scale, that's what you're doing in the army. You're doing hard things together, and that's how you build up, in my opinion, a high performing team. And I just wanted to sort of circle back and just touch on what you said there. But and the accountant bloke you described, classic example. I mean, I got the opportunity to work on selections after when I was qualified, and when it was our squadron's turn to chip in, and like it's just fascinating. Like I said, the lesson in human dynamics, I love it. I nerd out on it. I think, you stand 100 people, the numbers that you get, but and you obviously you judge people straight away. You go, well, this person will make it or won't make it, and you see the people that you think are absolute athletes or absolute weapons. They're not there a few days later, and I think Aussies in general, we love an underdog. All the underdogs are still there, and it's just that person that's willing to show up every day and give 100%. And doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter, there's a certain level of, obviously, a benchmark level of, intellect and fitness and all the other parameters there from the start. But there's no gauge for desire.
Yeah, there really isn't. And I also think this is why people are so fascinated by SAS, Special Forces, T1 operators, and fighters. I mean, people love watching a good fight. The UFC is a massive sport now. Why? Because you see guys at the brink of just absolute, they're done, and then they come back and win. And that type of stuff is just a testament to, I think, the resilience of humans. Off camera, you said to me, I have a different idea of resilience.
Yeah, well, particularly going through business school, which I did when I was leaving the army I sort of finished up. Well, that was 2019 and 2021. I remember it used to piss me off because it was, in the business world, there's waves of themes as you know, and I think still there's a bit of a hangover of that. But resilience was the number one spoken thing. You always hear about leadership, resilience, and I remember thinking, like, man, to me, it's just so obvious. And maybe it's not that obvious to other people, but I guess it's the life that I've lived and the path that I've walked. But I think, people talk about resilience like it's the end goal. Like, oh, one day you'll be resilient and, you'll be an absolute unit and you won't have to worry about anything, but it's like, people talk about like a destination, but it's something that you need to be doing like yesterday, So I've kind of when I describe it, I talk about, forget the word resilient. You might get there one day, you might not. That's down the track. Focus on being less fragile. So if resilience is at one end of the scale, fragile is at the other. You're just trying to move as close to this way as you can, and trying to run away from that way. So you're becoming less fragile. So how can you do that? I like to think that I'm unoffendable. So if you are easily offended, it's like the old saying, that's your problem. So people are always going to offend you. You're never going to go through life, in this pristine sort of environment. Like, people are always going to piss you off. They're always going to annoy you. So if you can learn to, becoming less fragile, becoming unoffendable, instead of getting offended, get inquisitive, be a lifelong learner. So why did that person say this? Why did they say that? Yeah. If you're inquisitive, you're becoming less fragile, mate. Your life gets so much easier. And honestly, I'm one of the happiest people I know. And you sort of described that at the start. And honestly, for me, life is it's just a learning journey. I just look everywhere. I see people, getting offended, and I just think, mate, that's, unless it's stopping you from doing what you're doing in that moment, it's not worth worrying. And and I like to, you're making your life intentionally harder, because we have an easy life. Yeah, I'll give you an example. I never use escalators or the lift. I always take the stairs. Something really simple. You can do it right now. You start right now, and it's all the stuff that makes a difference. And I love it because it's my little Rocky Balboa moment where I'm walking up the stairs and I look at everyone else around me, using the escalator, and I get a little, like, it's the same feeling I got on selection when I saw less and less stretches every night. I'm like, yep, I'm moving up in the world. It's that feeling of progress. And having cold showers in the morning, I always turn the hot shower off to cold, and it's hard. Like, it doesn't get any easier. It fucking sucks. And some mornings I'm sitting there going, yeah, this isn't going to be good. And even if it's for a shorter time, but you just got to make, if life's easy, you got to stay, comfort is our enemy, I think. And without sounding like two David Goggins, you gotta enjoy the comforts, but you just gotta make things harder sometimes.
Yeah, do something hard.
Do something hard.
Absolutely, do something
Don't
hard.
be fragile. Be less fragile.
Have you ever seen the TV show Ted Lasso?
No, I haven't.
I think you'll love it.
Yeah?
One of my favorites. I've watched it maybe 3 times. There's a quote in there. He says, "Be curious, not judgmental."
Nice.
And I always remember that, because I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I could judge this person and I could think this or that, but I could also offer them some grace and just be curious.
Exactly, man. Exactly. Yeah. And I think, a lot of, how many guys, guys that are really well trained, martial arts, whatever, they're not the guys that I see going out to bars, picking fights and stuff, because they've tested themselves in that domain. They're comfortable with who they are as a man, so the only room to move from there is to be a nice person. And, you can, if you choose to not be a nice person when you need to, that's fine. You can do that, but you've got it. So where else is there to go? If you're at the top of the food chain like that, so to speak, if you're sorted, because a lot of men aren't sorted mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, if you're all that, then your duty is to help others attain that. You should be a shepherd. That's what being a real man is. You're a shepherd, you're a leader, and you're showing people the path, to get there.
Absolutely. Hey, so you go through selection, you end up in the SAS. How long were you in the SAS, roughly?
Did a bit over a decade, so about
over a decade. About 11 years.
Timer.
How did you deal, and you don't have to go into details, but do you remember kind of your first deployment, your first mission because my idea of SAS missions is essentially no one else can do them. Here's what I imagine it to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically, okay, we've got this diplomat, he's in a high-risk situation, no one else can figure this out. We've got this unit of 15 guys with no real plan or structure. No one else can tell them we're just going to drop them there and they're going to fucking figure it out. That's kind of how I imagine SAS guys to be. They're just they're highly skilled, highly agile. They can adapt to an environment, and they're so well tuned with each other that they just fucking figure it out.
Yeah, that's how we like to picture ourselves in our heads anyway. But I guess an easy way to explain it, and if you've got the regular army, they're at, let's say, this level, baseline level, you take them overseas and deploy them and release them. Mission planners are going to have an idea of the effect of that. Let's say a battalion, an infantry battalion. You pluck any infantry battalion from the Australian Army now, drop them in, say, Afghan or Ukraine or whatever environment. There's a certain level of expectation that they can achieve. The theory behind training SAS and commando guys to such a high level is because mission planners can go, oh, what's the problem? Because we're problem solvers at the end of the day, right? So there's a problem here, and different problems require different solutions, don't they? So, you can't train for everything, and that's why the capabilities are split, so high-level hostage rescue might be SAS, counterterrorism, commandos, and you get people that just do that day in, day out, and they get very good at it. And so the theory being when something pops up, because you train so much, just remember the special forces that we're still the same. We're still soldiers. We're just a little bit better trained, a little bit better resourced. And we've just shown that we want to do that job because we've endured selection. That's essentially what it is in a nutshell, without sort of embellishing it. And so going back to what you asked me, it depends on what the mission is. So, if I look at the different types of environments and missions I've trained for, like obviously in training and how many I've done for real, what I've done for real is very small because we train for a lot of different things. So yeah, we train for hostage rescue, or, we train in the jungles of Papua New Guinea in case we are in that environment, and we train long range vehicle patrols in a desert. And we when we're training, we cover all contingencies, going back to you and I spending half an hour trying to figure out this Murphy's Law. It's about eliminating Murphy's Law. If you started the mission, Murphy's Law is that, because things will always go wrong. They always do. No plan survives the first shot, as the old military saying goes. But it's about eliminating Murphy's Law, training to simulate conditions as much as you can. And then the rest, there's the element of, so particularly in Afghanistan, the unit had a mission, and there was an element of, we'll just drop you here and we'll figure the rest out, because you've done so much training. You call it SOPs, what everyone in your team's going to do. And that's why you can achieve the mission or mission success. But going back to the infantry battalion, they're all still, that's where we all come from. But there's that gap of capability, and that's all it is. We've trained harder and for longer.
Do certain guys on the team in the unit have different responsibilities?
Yeah.
I mean, in MMA, we got this guy's better at grappling. This guy's a great striker. This guy, because you were to create a team, you would put them in their separate kind of things. So, is there certain guys in the team that have different responsibilities just based on their natural ability to do something?
Absolutely. So, just it's basic math, right? So a section in infantry is 10 guys. So you've got the section commander, the 2IC, and 8 other guys that do other shit. One will carry a machine gun, one will carry the med kit. So in an SAS patrol, for example, half that number, same requirement. So what it means in training is you just do more courses and you get more qualified. And that's all Special Forces soldiers are. They're just guys that have gone more training. So for example, when we go through our years training after selection, we specialize in all these things. So for example, for myself, you get to certain gates and you either branch off and become, the team medic or the team communicator. And then you join again and you do some more courses, and then you split again, you do your insertion training. So, all right, this guy's going to be free fall. This guy's going to be water. So they'll do all their diving. This guy's going to be vehicle mounted. So we do quad bikes, motorbikes. So when you're in a team, you've got, depending on what the mission is, you've got specialized people that have, better or more specialized capabilities. So, I ended up in the sniper team later on. So I did my sniper courses and did all my sniper instructing courses. And that was my, specialty. And guys specialize in, there'll be dog handlers or demolitions or whatever. So yeah, you depending on what the mission set is depending on who you take along for the ride.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And looking back on maybe your first mission as a fresh kind of SAS guy, were you afraid?
Don't know if afraid's the word. was definitely nervous, but it's weird because you've done all this training, and the training's so realistic to the day of the race. It's as real as it can be, and I guess through osmosis, the way that you're recruited and trained and brought into SAS teams, it's not like when it's your first time. It's not everyone else's first time. So there's an element of comfort. You're like, for example, my first trip with the unit, my team commander had done everyone senior to you basically has done multiple tours. So you're kind of like, oh, well, I'm in good company, and it's not afraid. It's like a healthy respect for what's coming, I guess.
Like a healthy vigilance, so to speak. Like you're a bit vigilant. Yeah,
exactly. And I think everyone, you understand the risks, but it's not at the forefront of your mind. You don't, because remember, the way we think is it's like if you're a footy team, or an AFL team, or like you said, let's say you're a fighter, you're not going into the fight with any doubt. You're thinking, am I gonna win this? Am I not gonna win this? Like their mentality is, man, I'm absolutely gonna win. And it's only until they get beaten that changes, and they're like, oh wow, did win. And it's the same as when you're jumping on a helicopter, flying in to do a mission. You're not thinking, oh, I wonder if we're gonna win today. It's like you're hunting mentality. You're on.
You have to think that way.
You're the A team, not anyone else.
Yeah.
So until that gets disrupted, then you're not thinking any other way.
Yeah. I think that's a really good system. The idea that if it's your first time, it's nobody else's first time. That's something that I feel like you could do outside of, in other organizations, in work, in whatever it is. If you have somebody that's they're new at the thing, put them in a team with guys that are very experienced, and that's a really good way to do it.
Why wouldn't you? It makes sense, right? And because it's such a specialized role, it is a small unit. It is a very slow moving hierarchical system. So, it's just the way that's worked out, but then again, the turnover rate of personnel, it's not high. It's quite low compared to other units in the army. But for example, now, there wouldn't be many guys left in the unit that have done that tour, but it doesn't matter because the standard and the level that unit train at, I'm sure right now the standard of people that are coming through after selection are way better than we ever were, and we were way better than our predecessors ever were, and for a high performing organization, if that's not the case, then you've got a problem.
Yeah,
the guys coming through should be the best shots. They don't have the knowledge or the experience yet, but and that's what's good about that place is if you're a senior person, you're always on your toes because there's nowhere to hide. If you slip in standards like fitness or shooting or whatever, it becomes pretty obvious, and the junior guys are sitting there going, what's the go with this guy? So you've just got to be on your game the whole time.
Yeah, you can't hide. And again, like this is the parallel to jiu-jitsu. We always say the maths don't lie. Like you can't hide. In other organizations in the world, maybe in a corporate environment or whatever, you can kind of slip away with not getting the job done properly, or you can get away for a while with not, because it's so diluted. But I feel like in things like the SAS and in combat sport, you just can't. Can't hide it.
No, you can't. No, that's right.
Yeah.
And that accountability. That's the beautiful thing about people that have walked any kind of, even you can even get it, like you said, from a martial arts gym, any part of your life that you can be held to account, I think, is going to flow through how you behave in the rest of your life. Otherwise, you're just going to kid yourself, and you'll get away with cutting corners and bullshitting yourself. And in the end, that's how people, I think, go unchecked, because you need people. If you don't have mates that are going to do it, you need gates along the way to say, hey, hang on a minute, you're getting a bit too big for your boots here, or you're a dreamer. Like, let's keep it, let's keep it true, or whatever you want to call it. But it's very and like I said earlier, I feel privileged to be able to have walked this path. Like a lot of people, particularly young men, I think not excluding women, people want to know where they stand and know that they've been tested and be comfortable with who they are and not have any questions
Yeah.
to ask themselves, can I do that, or could I have done it, or, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me about getting back into civilian life and the Krait Foundation. I know a little bit about what it is, but you said after SAS you went into business school.
Yep.
So what was coming back into normal civilian life like for you, and what did you do?
Yeah, well, it's basically the cornerstone of what I do now. So essentially that journey, so 2016, I ended up divorcing. I was living in Perth. So was my wife. I had two young kids. At that time, they were 3 and 5. So very young, and I was definitely, I could say I was affected, mentally, but I didn't know it yet, or I wasn't willing to accept it. So that affected my behavior at home, around my family. And to be honest, kind of lost interest. It's sad to say, but the army was, the SAS was basically just not taking over my life. It was my whole life, and when I had trouble at home, it was my escape as well. So it became everything. And obviously, things went downhill with my relationship. So my ex-wife ended up moving to Melbourne, which is where I am now. And I was living on base, and I had some, so all of 2017, I lived on the base and in a single kind of, studio apartment overlooking, the ocean. And I just remember there was a lot of soul searching done in that room. And at the time I was studying Indonesian, so through the army, and I chose to study Indonesian as a break to sort my marriage out, which actually went the opposite. So, but it gave me perspective, and what you need to do in these situations is stop, and you need to give yourself time to think and stop the distraction, stop the noise, and work out what I wanted to do. So it was at that point I worked out, I had to choose between the SAS and raising my kids. So sort of the things were kind of drying up. The unit was moving in a different place, and I just sort of started to doubt whether or not I had the dedication to do that job anymore. And I've always said that, unlike other organizations, once you are not dedicated to that job, move out of the way. Let the up and comers come through, because it's not a place where you can tread water. And you see some of these old guys that didn't get that email, and they were great soldiers in their day, but they hung on too tight. You got to know when to jump. It's a speed train. You got to know when to get off. And if you fuck it up, it's not good. So I knew I had to get off. So the old monkey with one branch, I'm not going to let go until I got the next branch in my hand. So I had the opportunity to do an MBA, as a scholarship. And my neighbor at the time was doing it, and he said, "Look, it's just an awesome way to," because I never had an undergrad. I joined the army straight from school, and I was straight into it. Never considered studying, so I was like, "Why would I study?" And he said, "Well, the MBA it's essentially a broad brush. It's like you're going to hit the wave tops of all these different subjects that you're going to come across in the business world, and essentially you've got all that, you've done it, but it's under a different name. So, mission planning in the SAS, you're talking about, friendly, enemy, civilians, and in the business world, that's called stakeholders, important people. So it was basically another language course for me to kind of, and it was awesome. I think I'm a huge believer in education, not just for transitioning soldiers, but anyone who's kind of stuck in a rut in their life or in their particular field. The only way to get out of it is to education, and it might be formal education, non-formal, whatever it is. Start learning something else and light that pilot light over here or over there, and chase that next opportunity. And for me, the MBA did that. It invigorated me. It pulled me away from military life. And, I used to say to my mate, every subject that I did, I was getting less like a soldier. Because I was learning something new, and I was able to kind of internalize and put a label on all the things that I've done in the army, particularly in a world of special operations. And it gave me that confidence and I'll talk about my 3 big points that people struggle with leaving the army. And actually I'll talk about that now, because it absolutely nails it. So a few weeks ago, we finished up with the Krait Foundation. I'll chat about that in a moment, but we had 3 points that came out of the week that, the hardest things to do when you leave the army. number one, and first and foremost, is imposter syndrome. That little bitch can, that they have the ability to screw up a lot of hard work. So imposter syndrome. The second one is your network and not knowing how to use it. The third one is, which I'm talking about, and sort of, what we're speaking about before, is the transferability of skills. So knowing that what you've done in another life, once you kind of spit and polish it, it actually can, you can contribute a hell of a lot to the world if you know how to use it. So they're the three things that came out of the Krait Foundation, and they're the three things that really hit me the hardest when I left. But I was lucky. I had the MBA scholarship, which was through the Wandering Warriors. And the Wandering Warriors is the charity that I work for now, and that the Krait sit underneath, right? So once I was able to sort those things out, I to be honest, I think I had a pretty good transition. I had a lot of great mentors around me, and that's another thing you need. You need to ask questions. And for anyone who's listening, who's either, because I work in the transition space now. That's like, I'm a self-appointed subject matter expert in it, because I've been living and breathing it since I got out. But anyone listening who isn't happy where they are, or is going to transition to another job, another role, another life, I'd recommend an article called 50 Cups of Coffee, right? And we can drop it in the link, after this. But for the Krait Foundation, people coming to do our program, so people who have served in special operations who are leaving the military, come and do our program. And what that article's about, it's about finding people in an industry or, where you might end up, and just dropping them a line and say, hey, can we catch up for a coffee? And you've got a list of 50 cups of coffee, and the theory being, by the time you've had 50 cups of coffee with 50 different people, you've kind of tested and adjusted different industries. Okay, so I'm interested in getting into engineering. Can you tell me what that's about? Well, it's going to take you 6 years to get qualified. Oh, is that right? Okay, turn that light off. Come over here. I mean, you know what I mean? And it's basically, and we probably all do that anyway, subliminally, but it's a more intentional way of, it's like a flow chart. Yes, no, this way, that way. A dedicated journey to saying, I need to find out what I want to do, how I'm going to get there. So let's make it happen right now. 50 cups of coffee, and it's a really good way of doing business, I think. So that's mandatory reading for the Krait Foundation. So what is the Krait Foundation? It's for anyone who's ever served in special operations, and it's not just people who are on the coalface. It's all of our enablers, we call them, or our supporting elements, because they've chipped in a lot as well. The radio operators, the medics, the people that cook our food, the parachute riggers, they can all come and do the program. And we run a week-long program out of Sydney. That's where you and I first met, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Through Nick. Yeah. I was about to run the first Krait, but if I said to you, you've got a group of special operations soldiers that suffer from these three acute things: imposter syndrome, lack of knowledge about transferring their skills, and not knowing how to utilize that network, what would you put in the curriculum? And that's essentially what we've done. So we start with a lot of introspective work. Gallup Strengths, if you've heard of that, the Y Institute. So I'm actually a Gallup Strengths certified coach. No big deal. That's what a 4-day coaching course gets you. But I did that. And what we do on the Krait is with the 50 cups of coffee, we send that out to people. We send out a link to do your Gallup test, and we send out a link to do the Y Institute. Day one, we turn up and we start building what we call pocket stories, right? So if I said to you right now, Marko, tell me a bit about yourself, mate. What are you good at? What's that muscle memory story that you've learned verbatim? How, if you had 30 seconds to tell a stranger what you can do and how good you are, that's essentially what we're building in that first day of the program. So you're taking the results from your Gallup profile. So out of a possible 34 strengths, spits out your top 5, right? And we just say, look, instead of trying to be a jack of all trades or an all-rounder, these are the 5 things that you're naturally good at. And a lot of people go through their life, doing, leading with them without even realizing. So there's a lot of that day one, mate. It's hilarious. There's a lot of like light
bulbs.
People,
Yeah.
Mine's blowing. So it's like, and you've got something to work with straight away. Gallup strengths. Here's what you're good at. Let's go. And I'll move around, do some coaching on it, or draw some sort of, I guess, make people see, because initially the results might be, well, I don't know, I don't think this is me. And then you say, well, hang on a minute, how have you done it? I might say, oh, they're a people person, but they think they're super hard and tough. But hang on a minute, how have you been able to influence people over your life? Has it been through being kind and being more of a magnet? And then you start to show them and they're just like, oh my God, you're right. So it's about, showing people what they're naturally good at, building at their introspective work, their pocket stories. Then we move through the week. We have guest speakers, people who have started businesses. Basically, we hear from a myriad of different veterans and their stories. And, the thing is, from the day you join the military, from day one, right? From when you're getting yelled at on the bus at basic training, you get off, everything's done as a team. Everything's done as a team the whole way through, right? Then the army, when you leave, you transition as an individual. It's like you're out the door. So all we're doing, and we're not reinventing the wheel, at the Krait, you're transitioning back as a team. So instead of going through all these things on your own, going, shit, I wonder how people dealt with this leaving the military. I wonder how people dealt with that. You're having these conversations with a group of 30 people.
Mm.
But what might have taken someone 10 years to kind of demilitarize, because the army will build you up to a certain level, right? That's a civilian, that's baseline. Every course you do, you're climbing, you're walking up the stairs and you're at the top of your game, militarily. But then there's no program to get you back off the ski slopes. You've got to find that out yourself. So what might have taken someone 10 years to get off that ski slope in the Krait, let's say they can get back. And you might never get to baseline. You might not want to, you might not want to. I don't want to be a civilian. I don't like that. Yeah. I don't like those traits but you need to demilitarize and it's learning another language. It's saying, well, hey, this stuff you learned in the military, to get the actual experience, it's your expertise. It's what did you learn? Like what does it say about you? Okay, you were willing to do this selection course to attain this particular title, beret, whatever you want to call it. But how does that translate in the civilian world? What can you bring? A lot of people, they might not want to end up, they might not want to work for an organization. They might want to start their own business. So, we have an entrepreneur workshop. So it's basically giving the people a whole bunch of different options, a shotgun approach at life after the military.
Man, that's amazing. That sounds like something everyone should do.
100%.
Even youth, like I think coming out of high school, that's a program you need to go 50 cups of coffee, go figure out what you want to do.
Man,
because so many people start something and then by the time they finish, they realize this isn't at all what I wanted to do.
Mate, honestly, I've had this conversation so many times. Every time I run a Gallup workshop, and because I absolutely nerd out on it. And if anyone listening, if there's anyone awake still by now,
you'll be surprised.
If they ever reach out and it's something I want to explore doing that Gallup coaching, because mate, I absolutely love it. And I think if it's good for veterans finding out what they want to do right here, right now, it takes you 40 minutes to do the test, and then it spits out a top 5. Once you get that top 5 explained, your level of understanding of yourself increases by 10-fold, and you can start to understand why you do the things you do. You can understand where you can add value in your life. So it was. And it can, like you said, it can save you so much time. So the 4, just digressing a little bit, the 4 pillars in Gallup where you'll end up is, I'm looking at it now, executing, influencing, relationship building, strategic thinking, right? So you'll have a smattering of, they're the 4 themes. And for me, I've got 3 in relationship building and, one of each in the others. But if I were to do the test on you, Marko, and you've got 5 of your top 5 are all in, say, strategic thinking, right? You're an up and out guy, all in the green, and you're working as a salesman. You're there might be a mismatch, or you don't enjoy your job, and it's like, hang on a minute, you can diagnose it straight away. Or alternatively, your boss might be saying, hey man, I need you to sell this product, and all of your fiber are in strategic thinking. You might be better off doing data analytics or something. So it's about finding what you're naturally good at, and then you can extrapolate out from there where you belong.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And that can save you, mate, just that simple. And you can get it in an hour. You know,
it saves you so much angst when you pick what you want to do in your life, because I believe everyone is exceptionally good at something. Everyone has this natural ability to do something, and the people who have it easier and are able to achieve more success is they figure that out when they're young, and then they run with it. And they go with that thing, if you're 6'8" and you're agile and you can jump, go play basketball.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. So pick the thing that you have the natural abilities to do, and then run with it and develop that skill.
Yeah.
It just makes life so much easier.
Funny, when my grandfather was still alive, my dad's dad, he was training for World War II. He was too young. World War II finished when he was 17, so he missed out. But he was doing some training at a place called Canungra, and they had to jump off this big tower into the water. And he said there was this big kind of fat guy in his platoon that everyone was bullying and kind of trying to push around and mess around. And he jumps off the tower and he disappears, right? And they're all like trying to find him, and they're like, oh my God, this guy's drowned. And what he was good at was holding his breath, right? So what he did was he gets to the bottom and he held his breath. He swam around the corner of the creek. When they found him, he'd waterproof some tobacco. He's just sitting on the river.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And obviously got the shit after that. But that was one of the lessons my grandfather taught me. He's like, mate, someone, no matter how useless you think they are good at something.
Absolutely, yeah. They've got something that they're exceptional at. Yeah.
And I think, like you said, so, some people, but the conversations I've had with people around this, like, we should run this for people leaving sport. We should run this for people leaving, when they first get into the unit, because so corporate, it's prevalent. Gallup's all through. I know we've spoken a lot about Gallup, but I find it so fascinating. Like, companies utilize it because in a team environment, if I have an issue with you and we're meant to work together, and I'm like, oh, Marko's always, getting up me for, he's a do it now type person, and I'm more of but when you do Gallup, it's like you can talk another language. Oh, this is what's Marko's top 5. He's disciplined, focus, achiever, arranger. Oh, that's why he's so like, let's get it done now. Whereas, and you'll look at mine and go, oh, I'm harmony, includer, positivity, which actually are mine.
Yeah.
So Blue's more of a relationship guy. So you actually can understand people at a fundamentally at a lower level. So yeah, it's great. But sort of, awesome. I know we've blown a lot of.
Mate, I'm going to do it. I've written them down. 50 Cups of Coffee, Gallup Strengths, and the White Institute. I want to do it.
I'll send you a because how it works. I've purchased a whole bunch of the Gallup questionnaires. I think it cost me maybe $15 a pop. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Do it, and then we'll go through your results, man, because I'm keen, and I'll have a crack at guessing them too.
Yeah, deal. Let's do it. Yeah. I think that's
awesome.
Mate, I've got I think everyone should go through this. I think in the future maybe we do it for like kids leaving high school. Figure out what you want to do, because I think the double-edged sword with wanting to, you said earlier in the interview, you said I'm lucky because I knew what I wanted to do.
Exactly.
The problem with that, you often don't know what the next. That's all you see. So all I want to be an SAS guy, or I want to be a UFC fighter, or I want to be a whatever, and then you achieve that and you do it, and then there's a time where it ends.
Exactly.
And then you don't really have anything else that you've thought about. And I think it's such a great, for those people who don't know because so many people I think are lost these days, that I don't know what I want to do. Do I want to study? Do I want to not? And knowing what you want takes a little bit of, how do I explain? You have to be a bit stubborn. And because when I was going through uni, my dad would be like, go study finance. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah. And you have to have a little bit of that disagreeable nature about you to be like, I'm not doing that, I'm doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Not everyone has that. Some people are more harmony and they want to make people happy, and they go throughout life doing things that they don't really want to do.
Yeah. No, and you know what? You kind of reminded me of something there. So I think I consider myself spoiled, right? And I mean that. I'm spoiled because I was handed what I wanted to do on a plate. And And I guess the next version of that is what we deal with in the Krait Foundation, because everyone's been in that position where I was in, because it takes a certain amount of dedication to, to commit to select. And I'm talking about guys that are in the commandos. We have females that have served in special operations, do our programs. So all those prototypes, all of those people to serve under the umbrella of special operations, you need to have had a pretty clear or delineated path, right? So that's when the problem starts, when that path, the unknown afterwards. And that's why we try and give people comfort and confidence around the unknown. But one thing I wanted to add to what you said is people listening that, let's say they might be 20s, 30s, I don't know, late 40s that haven't found that yet. I always think that some of the best people in life, and when I say the best at, not necessarily professionally, but the best at life, they're people that have done a whole bunch of different things. So, particularly for people leaving school, I think the statistics these days are like, unlike our parents' generation where, you leave school at 17, you start working at the factory and they give you a gold watch at 65 and you're retired. Those days are over. It's not, and in working in the transition space where I work now, I'm privy to some of these stats. And I think on the Krait, yeah, that's right. We had a guest speaker on the Krait a few weeks ago, and he said that this generation might be expected to change jobs and roles 15 or 16 times. Right? So what does that tell you? That means that every single, and even the kid working at Macca's, and I'll tell my kids this, everyone wants to be at the top of the pyramid straight away, but it doesn't work like that unless, you're an entrepreneur and you find something to make money that no one else has thought of, and then you deserve it, right? But otherwise, like the rest of us, it's a war of attrition. So, to those young people that think that they're flipping burgers at Macca's and they go, you know what, I'm not really into this because one day I'm studying law and I'm just paying for my law school. But the life lessons that you're learning, they don't come when you're the lawyer. They come right there, right now in McDonald's, flipping burgers, dealing with assholes, having, a pimply faced manager yell at you to pull out the fries. Like, that's where the lessons are learned. And the people that always say, oh, I want to get to the top of the pyramid, you need to tell them, man, everything you do professionally in life, that's all adding to the end result. That's you're building greatness in everything you do. And if you're not doing everything to the best of your ability, I tell my kids that, I said, if you want to be successful in life, even when I was laboring while I was waiting for a position in the army, I was told, mate, you're a hard worker. Where'd you learn this? And it's because I had a good upbringing. You got to learn to work hard at a young age, right? It doesn't matter what job you're doing. If you're a cleaner and you're doing a half-assed job, don't be a fucking cleaner. Do your job properly. Do it to the best of your ability, because that, will subtend through you don't just, do a half-assed job as a cleaner and then miraculously become an amazing, whatever, insert profession here. It starts with what you're doing right here, right now.
Absolutely. And I see this in the business world. I see guys who have either come from money or they've made money, say crypto, for example. They've run into making a heap of money in crypto and then they want to start a business, but they don't have the skills because they never developed them. Yeah. And, you want to be at the top of the pyramid, but do you have the skills to keep that pyramid, to maintain it? Like what, it's the shit stuff that you go through as building a business. When you first start as an entrepreneur, you make so many mistakes. And those mistakes, if I had to start my business again now, knowing what I know now, I'd do it twice as fast, 10 times better.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Right. So it's, you can't expect to go, I want to be at the top of the pyramid. No, you need to start from the bottom so that you can build the skills so that when you get to the top of the pyramid, you can actually maintain it and do it, because it's not, it's actually, in jiu-jitsu, we say never give your student a belt that they can't carry.
Nice. I like that.
Right. So don't give them a black belt if they're not a black belt yet, because it makes their life more difficult. Don't give somebody a CEO role if they don't have the skills for a CEO role. It's not good for them.
Exactly. So that's a great way to describe it.
You need to build your skill set. And I think I'm so grateful for growing up with immigrant parents who worked, like where we come from, dad worked a very high-end job, but moving here, it was cleaning and making burgers at 35 years old. So like watching that and seeing all the skills, it's been amazing. Mate, I've got one more question,
Yeah.
and then I've actually got something for you, but because I know you've got to run soon as well. There's a few things that you've said in the interview, and I didn't notice this about you before, but I've noticed it today. You talked about being a good shepherd. I think you have a lot of grace. Your demeanor, like the way you think about other people, serving people duty, and I've also noticed that you're wearing a rosary.
Yeah.
Talk to me about God. Talk to
Well,
me about your faith.
this is made from coconut. It's from Brazil, so my fiance is Brazilian. Look, I'm Anglican by, I suppose by birth, and yeah, by choice as well. But you know, I suppose my faith wasn't as strong as it could have been as a teenager. I've grown up in, you know, I suppose not super religious household, but you know, we used to say grace before dinner, and it was kind of, I guess I was religious because that's what we did without giving it any thought. It wasn't really until, I suppose, when I started really asking questions was, you know, when I was in the army. And I remember having a parachute collision. A guy flew into my canopy, and yeah, I thought I was going to die. I actually thought I was going to die. And I was just, I don't know, I was praying to someone. I was like, you know, can you at least spare me on this one? And I ended up having a really nice landing, landing in this massive canola fields, and just sitting on my pack and going, right, that's it, I quit. Gonna go stack shells at Woolies. I don't give a fuck now, yeah. Obviously that didn't happen, but it was after that where I was like, man, you know, there's something bigger. I don't know what it is. I believe in reincarnation as well. Funnily enough, and that's recently. And yeah, since meeting my fiance now, she's super, I wouldn't say religious, very spiritual. So what I believe in is it's a cross between the spirituality, there's some reincarnation, and there's a higher being, and I can't really describe what it is, but it's definitely it's hard to describe, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Well, that is God, right?
Yeah.
That's God. So and I think to go through life thinking that you are you're the only one doing it, you're kidding yourself, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I think. Yeah.
I remember having these questions, and I talked to a priest, and he said, just keep your heart open and try to look at the world through spiritual eyes. And what you'll realize is that everything is a miracle.
Oh man.
Everything you've ever gone through, every experience you've, like, that experience was a miracle.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's obviously been other times where, yeah, just I can't explain it. It's too hard to put into words. But
yeah.
And I think the older you get, the more that you have to live for, the more questions you have. Naturally, the wiser you get, the smarter you get, the more you open, like you said, you open your heart, you open your eyes. The more you want to learn, you just sit there and you look back through history, and you're like, man, you can't learn enough about it, you know.
Yeah, love it.
But
I got something for you. Give me a sec.
Also, what about
wrap up?
Drum roll.
So a few weeks ago, somebody I know purchased a deceased estate up on kind of near Nelson Bay. Yeah. And it was an old Australian couple, very old Australian couple. And the kids left the furniture, and this couple had this massive book collection. And I said, don't throw it out. I want to come have a look, you know. So I drove up to Central Coast, and I went through their library, and I found this book, and I thought of you. And next time you do Krait and you're in Sydney, I want to give it to you. But it's a book called Gallipoli by Moorhead. I don't know who this is, but this is a original copy. It looks very, very old to me.
This is my old man reading glasses.
And mate, it's an original copy of a book called Gallipoli. So by Alan Moorhead. So
yeah, that's incredible.
I don't know if you'll find anything of
oh man,
interest in there, but I know I thought of you as soon as I saw it. I was like, oh, Blue would love this. Because I remember seeing a post on your Instagram about your granddad and serving in Gallipoli, so this would be good.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
thanks.
it's 1959 it was published, or 1940 actually.
That's unreal, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Well, I got something for you as well, mate. Well, while we're exchanging gifts before we wrap up, I'm gonna have to send it in the mail unless you've got any other ideas. But I've got this Krait coin.
Oh, mate, that's awesome.
Boom.
Love it. Epic.
There you go.
When is the next Krait foundation for people that?
At the time of this recording, we're in nearly December 04. I've got to stop living in the past, man. 2024. So fingers crossed for May 2025.
Epic.
So we're
awesome.
getting quite, the interest is getting quite big now. And the good thing is people that are less special operations up to a decade ago, we're trying to bring them back in, and we're building up our special operations network. It's going to be an empire.
Yeah, epic. Well, I'm going to put the link for the Krait Foundation in the description of the video and pretty much everywhere. And so people want to go, I'm assuming they hit the link and follow the steps and do what they need to do.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks very much. And, always happy to give a free plug to the Krait, but obviously completely not-for-profit. No one makes any money from it. Changing a lot of lives. So, yeah, it's probably the best job we've ever had, to be honest.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks for doing this, Blue.
No, my pleasure, mate. Thanks so much for having me on there. And cheers to all the listeners out there. Like I said, if you're still awake, reach out, have a yarn. And I look forward to catching up in the flesh, mate. It's been too long between drinks. So
we'll see each other in May.
Next time. Yeah, give me a shout if you come to Melbourne, eh?
For sure. Thank you, mate.
All right, mate. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers, mate.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, soon. See you, brother.